Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the 35th anniversary celebration of Traxtion. I'm here today as the chairman of Traxtion, but also as the chairman of Principal Capital, which is the largest shareholder in Traxtion. I'm delighted to see so many people here to take part with us in the celebration which marks not only 35 years of Traxtion's existence, but a celebration as well of the business which was started on the back of a bakkie by the founder, Roy Puffett, 35 years ago. 35 years later, it has grown to be Africa's largest independent rail company. Jamie Holly, our CEO, has asked me to talk of my personal journey and involvement with Traxtion, which started 15 years ago. In 2005, I was fortunate enough to take my two oldest boys, then in their late teens, and some friends, and fly in two helicopters from Cape Town along the eastern coast of southern Africa to the border of Kenya and Somalia. On the trip that took 2 weeks, I witnessed the beginnings of a renaissance of investment in southern Africa, from the old colonial infrastructure that had been left behind to the exciting new investment by foreign governments into rail, airports and road. I returned to the United Kingdom, where I was living at that stage, and was convinced that there was a massive opportunity to invest in infrastructure in southern Africa. At that time, our offices in Geneva were home to the Qatar Investment Authority, and I set out to convince them that the infrastructure investment in southern Africa was not only an interesting business opportunity, but was fundamental and vital for the advancement of the area as well. I took the head of the QIA on a 10-day road and air trip around southern Africa, and he returned to Qatar completely convinced that there was a huge opportunity. 18 months later, we formed a London-listed infrastructure fund named PME with the Qatar Investment Authority and raised $200 million. Our objective was to invest in critical infrastructure in sub-Saharan Africa, and we set forth to invest in a number of mobile phone networks in Tanzania, Kenya, Uganda and Rwanda. I received a call while I was on holiday in 2007 from the CEO of the PME fund, who said a unique opportunity had arisen to invest in a railway business called Shelton, which at that stage was owned 50% by Roy Puffett, the founder, and 50% by Grindrod. I was immediately intrigued, as every little boy and every big boy wants to own a train set. Jokes aside, I worked through the proposal and immediately asked the CEO of PME to prepare a pack for an investment committee to consider the investment. 1 week later, I received a further call to say that there was a fleet of brand new GE C30 locos available, which were en route to Australia, and should we consider purchasing these as part of the investment in Shelton. We immediately held an investment committee meeting and proceeded not just with the investment in Shelton, but also with the purchase of the C30 fleet. From 2007, when we brought into the business, in 2008, until 2015, PME was owned jointly by the PME Fund and co-managed with Roy Puffett, the founder. In 2015, as part of the distribution strategy of PME, which was being wound up, the opportunity arose for Principal Capital to buy out the PME stake. Principal Capital, which is my company, purchased the PME stake on the understanding that Roy Puffett, as the CEO and the company finance director, would retire in the next 18 months, and the new CEO and finance director would be brought in to run the company. It was my ambition as the chairman and the largest shareholder at that stage to move the business from what was effectively a small family-run business to a professionally run and structured business, which would allow us to attract additional investment from outside investors and grow the business substantially. We immediately started to look for a new CEO for the business who shared our vision and had a railway background and experience. We were fortunate enough to find Jamie Holly, our CEO, who had previously built and run Grindrod's rail business. Jamie joined us in June of 2016, and he and I set out to talk to interested investors who shared our vision, not just on infrastructure, but particularly on rail. We were fortunate enough to be introduced to Harith, a leading African infrastructure fund, who not only shared our vision for Africa, but also for rail. Harrods made their first investment with us in 2017 and made a further investment with us in 2019, when we together purchased Roy Puffin's shares in the business and Roy moved into retirement. It is fair to say that Jamie and his team at Traxtion have achieved what they have achieved in the last 5 years is truly remarkable. Notwithstanding the early difficulties we faced in rebuilding the business, Jamie and his management team managed to employ and augment the Traxtion team with some of the most outstanding people I've ever worked with. Traxtion now has a team in excess of 350 people directly employed and 500 indirectly employed by Traxtion in Africa. It is a business today run in the most professional manner, with outstanding corporate governance and a social engagement and compact which sets an example for others in business in Africa. Today we have a fleet of around 60 locomotives and 250 wagons, and we're operating in 8 different countries in Africa. We were fortunate that our ambitions were matched by the recognition by a number of sub-Saharan African countries that allowed us to open access to their railway system, which was not only beneficial to them as additional income stream, but also that the private operators on their railway network fundamentally improved their overall logistic abilities and efficiencies. The open access allowed us to make long-term investments into locomotives and wagons and to build relationships with large logistic companies who partner with us on these open access routes. As a result of this open access, we're now fully deployed both in our locomotive fleet and wagons, and it's fair to say we could deploy more, many more, given the enormous demand for our services at the moment. We're a South African company who's grown from a minnow to a very large private company, and which up to now has been denied open access on the South African rail network. It is our great hope that given our success in building our business on an open access route basis in Africa, we will eventually, in the not too distant future, be allowed to grow in South Africa, where unfortunately until now we've not had the opportunity of open access rights on any of the South African rail network. As I said at the beginning of the speech, it is wonderful to see so many here, our VIP guests from rail, our VIP guests from business, and our VIP guests from the South African government. I would urge you all to work with us to facilitate open access in South Africa, which would allow us as a South African company to assist in building not only a greater Traxtion, but more importantly, a greater South Africa. I hope you'll have a wonderful day with us today, and that you're inspired by what we've achieved and what we hope to achieve in the railway space and hopefully South Africa in the future.
Traxtion. Be exponential.